welcome to the Criterion podcast, and today I'm here with Alexis Davis. Alexis Davis has been around last year for about 4 years now, and she has been involved with SALSU, has been a student athlete, and has basically is going to be graduating this year. So, Alexis, can you tell me a little about your experience with SALSU?
Sure. So, I'd never really been involved on campus before in leadership other than with basketball. So I was pretty nervous as the SALSU positions were opening up, like the hired positions.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, oh, I don't know if I want to apply. Like, I've never done anything like this before. But I eventually ended up doing it. And then when I got it, I was still, like, super nervous. But all the officers, like, when we got together, our first, like, meeting, everybody just kind of clicked. A lot of us were in the same boat where it was kind of, like, our first time being involved. We didn't really know, like, what to expect out of the year. But it's been a really, really good experience. I think just getting to know students more, because I wasn't super, other than with like athletes, like people I met in class, I didn't really put myself out there like with other students on campus. So I've gotten to know a lot of students from like different majors, and been really involved in just the activities and stuff that we're having. And I realized how big of an impact those type of things do make on students, especially people who aren't close to home, don't really have family. And then when we get together and do different activities or like provide like things for just students to do so they're not just like in their dorm all the time, like that makes a big difference for all of us, I think, building some community.
So what position were you hired for SALSU this year?
Right. So I'm parliamentarian now, so I've been in charge of running the elections for executive officers and then for our student senate, helping out with the student senate, and I run a couple of my own committees as well.
Okay, and so how was your experience with that position? Like, did you have like any issues along the way and like challenges that you were able to overcome? Like, how was your overall experience with that position?
So going into it, I thought it was going to be pretty easy, pretty straightforward, and it definitely was nothing like that. So when I ended up getting training the year before, I met with the current officer for like 30 minutes, and she gave me like a quick rundown of like, yeah, it's not a big deal, you know, just do this, this, and that, and you'll be fine. And I was like, oh, okay, this is easy. I was very unprepared, yeah.
Okay.
When I got into it, so it was a lot of work just having to kind of know the Constitution for the school, like, inside and out.
So you had to memorize the whole thing?
I had to be pretty confident with what I was saying. Kind of going into meetings, people were looking at me like, oh, well, can we do this? Like, what does the Constitution say about this? And I'm like,
yeah, so you have to be pretty confident. You have to know your stuff, yeah.
I'm looking it up on my phone, like, just hold on a second. let me look and see.
And so, like, you would say the beginning was like the challenge you had, just getting like in the groove of things, learning all the techniques and just everything about the position.
Yeah, I really had to study up on that. I had to study up on Robert's Rules of Order too for when I was in meetings, and just get more comfortable being able to run meetings and being like the chair and kind of teaching everyone else like what they're supposed to do in a committee.
And so, like now, from you look back then, how do you feel now, like as with your position, like again, this experience you had through the school year?
Very proud of myself because it was a lot to learn in a short amount of time. But I think I'm grateful for being put in kind of uncomfortable situations because that's something I wasn't really used to just because I wasn't really that involved before. So being placed kind of in a situation where you're uncomfortable and you're kind of having to, on the spot, kind of think, okay, how am I going to problem solve right now?
Yeah.
I think, that is going to help in everything in life. But that's something that I definitely learned a lot about, like, problem solving and quick thinking.
Mm-hmm. And so, like, now that you're leaving, will you have to, like, shadow someone for the new position open? Like, are you have to train them, or they're gonna have to wait till next year?
Yeah, like, I'm definitely gonna make sure I train somebody.
That's good. Yeah.
So they know that this job definitely is not easy, and things kind of come up during the year where we have to look in the Constitution. Do we have something for this? A lot of times we don't. Okay, well, we have to implement something. We need a new law. We need a new rule, like right now.
Yeah.
So that's something that I really had no idea was going to have to happen. So definitely preparing the next person and just giving them a rundown and kind of a timeline of how to get these things done so that they can accomplish everything in 1 year is going to be big.
And so let's say like when they begin it's about to start the new quarter, and the student that was hired sends you a text, let's say, or an email saying like, hey, or like they just started, like I'm a bit stressed. Like what was the best advice you can give them?
I think the first thing is to reach out to their advisor. So for me, my advisor was Dean Robinson this year, and she was like one of my biggest supporters in this whole process. She would sit down with me like, okay, let's just work through this right now. Like, we can do this. Let's put our heads together and we'll just work through it. So she's been really supportive, and she's also active in like faculty senate. So she knows a lot about like my position and the things that I had to do because she had done it already. So she was super awesome. And I think just having a good relationship with the vice president, because parliamentarian and the VP work really close. So those two things, they'll be fine. But just being prepared, at least knowing kind of what the job entails, is big.
Okay, I see. And so, like, kind of piggybacking off of that, like, how was your experience, like, throughout, because when did you start getting involved as a student athlete here?
So that was my freshman year.
Okay, so you've been here since the beginning. Oh, yeah. Wow, okay. Yeah. And what sport were you playing?
So I did basketball all 4 years. So our season starts in beginning of October, and we're not done till February.
Oh, wow.
So it's a long season.
Yeah, that is a long time. And so during your time as a basketball player here, what have you like? Do you believe you gained like more experience? You gotten improved more? Like, how has it helped you as a student overall?
Yeah. I think as a student, I learned a lot about teamwork, about collaboration. Sometimes having to put differences aside, that's a huge thing that I think I learned. And just how to build relationships sometimes with like maybe a coaching staff you don't agree with, or teammates when you guys are like having disagreements and stuff like that. Being able to like put those things aside and do things for the good of the team, not just for what you would prefer in the moment.
Yeah, I see what you mean.
So that's a really big thing that I kind of carried with me through like group projects in class. We all know how those can be.
Yeah.
Stuff like that.
And so were there ever times where, like, let's say especially when like towards finals week, where like, because you said you played the seasons from October to February, like there are times during, let's say, end of fall quarter, and you had like a game, but at the same time you had finals to study for. Like, how did you manage all that like in your schedule? Like that's been crazy for you.
Yeah, I mean, first thing I'd probably do was cry, and then after I cry a little bit, I'm like, okay, just stay up tonight, just get it done. Yeah. But I mean, I had a professor once. We had a game during the midterm, and the midterm was a huge chunk of our grade, maybe like 30% or something like that. So like if you didn't pass the midterm, you would not pass the class basically. And yeah, I had a game at night during my 6 to 10, and my professor was saying like, either you come to my class or you go to your game, but if you go to your game, you will not pass the class.
Wow. So that was a really tough choice. Yeah.
So I went to half the game and I went to class.
That's dedication.
Yeah, I tried to do both, but I mean, that kind of stuff happens not even just for basketball, but for all sports. Like, we all deal with that kind of thing with some professors sometimes. And
I've heard, like, because I knew students who were, like, in the volleyball team and how stressful it is, especially towards the end, and how, like, they always have to get, like, slips because, like, they have games, like I've seen throughout different classes. So it must be tough for you guys, just seeing that, like, balancing, college and, sports. Yeah. And so overall, like, how would you say your experience was as a student at La Sierra University?
I had an overall really good experience. I think that this place is a special place. And for me, I mean, dealing with basketball being so far from home, because I'm from Virginia, So me coming out here, I instantly had like a family when I joined basketball. And that was my community for so long, really up until like this year when I really branched out. And even like through Salsu, like I have a family in Salsu. So community is so big on this campus, and I didn't notice it until I started to get involved more.
That's what I noticed too as well. Like when I started getting involved here with the Criterion as a podcast editor and also like the math club, you know, I really learned that, you know, community, it just grows more as you get yourself involved with it.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
And so like what have you studied then throughout like your time here? Like what major were you pursuing?
Yeah, so right now I'm business management and I have a minor in legal studies.
Okay.
Yeah.
So like what are your plans for the future then? Are you planning to go to law or start something in a business?
Mm-hmm. So I just finished applying to law school, so I'm kind of still waiting to hear back to see like where I'll end up going in the fall.
Mm-hmm.
But my end goal is to either be able to have my own practice, which is where the business side will help.
Yeah, that's really good.
Yeah, and then other than that, like maybe being able to work for the ACLU or doing something where I can really like just give back to my community.
Yeah, that's really nice.
Yeah.
And so would you say like the business classes, like for other students who are like, let's say freshmen right now at business majors, would you say that like the business classes have really helped you to learn how to create a business and how to work with others?
Definitely. I think the best class one everyone should take is Principles of Entrepreneurship.
Oh, okay.
That class has been amazing. Really teaches you what it takes to run your own business and about like networking, finances, kind of all of that, how it's more than just the idea. Like,
and I also know another good one, like especially maybe in your case, is business law. I heard that one, like that's like the one everyone's afraid of taking. That's like every business major's like worst class, like fear.
Yeah, B-Law, love Dr. Fox. That class is
I heard he's
intense.
Great though. He's a great professor.
Is great.
Yeah.
The class is very, very intense. That was also a time when I cried a lot.
Okay.
that was another one of those classes.
And you were also in the basketball team. That must have been a busy,
in the heart of our basketball season. I'm just like, why now?
Crazy times.
Yeah.
Yeah. So overall, what would you give to incoming freshmen, let's say, who listen to this podcast, or even in the future, or would reach out to you, like as you being an alumni in the future? What's like one thing you would like that you've learned that you would recommend to them?
Mm-hmm. That's a good question. I think definitely to get involved. Something that is not so great, but that happens here, especially being in sports, you feel like because you're an athlete, you can't do anything else. So when I was a freshman, I was kind of like inadvertently told, like not told directly, but you feel like, okay, this is what you have to give 100% of yourself to. And because you're so busy in this, you do not have time for anything outside of this. Mm-hmm. And that's definitely not true.
Yeah.
You can definitely do both. And I think it's important that everyone, whether you're an athlete or not, that you are involved somewhere in campus where you're able to explore that other side of you that's not just sports, that you're able to find some other sort of like passion, another type of community. I think that's really, really important.
And I think it also helps even grow like your social self too.
Oh,
you know, definitely. Like, you know, I know people who were like very shy when they first came, and like now they're seniors and they're like just taught, like you would never believe who they were, you know, 4 years ago. So that's amazing. Well, thank you so much, Alexis. And thank you everyone for listening, and I'll see you in the next podcast.